The courage to lead fundamentally means you're willing to be open-minded, to consider that maybe, just maybe, the way you think the world works may be wrong. And the way we've been building our business based on all the social conventions and what everybody tells us are the right things to do maybe is wrong. And just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean it's right. Remember, the vast majority of the business philosophies and practices that we practice today are not norms of business. They're recent. They come from the 70s and 80s. The concept of shareholder supremacy, where we prioritize the interest of an external shareholder over the interests of our employers or customers, was a theory proposed in the late 1970s, popularized in the 80s and 90s by bastards like Jack Welch, who ran GE. The concept of using mass layoffs to meet an arbitrary financial projection at the end of the year did not exist prior to the 1980s. It was popularized by bastards like Jack Welch and General Electric. Rank and yank, the idea of ranking your employees based on performance, promoting the top 10% and firing the bottom 10% did not exist prior to Mr. Welch. And this man named Milton Friedman, an economist, they gave this guy a Nobel Prize. They gave Milton Friedman a Nobel Prize. He is credited with basically offering us what is considered the accepted definition of the responsibility of business. He said the responsibility of business is to maximize profits within the bounds of the law. What happened to ethics? Because ethics is a much higher standard than the law. The makers of the Titanic in the early 20th century built a ship that was 4 times larger than any other ship of the day. And the regulations that governed lifeboats were based on the size of the ship, and they didn't yet have a lifeboats for all provision. It said if your ship is this size, you need this many lifeboats. If your ship is this size, you need this many lifeboats. And their ship was 4 times larger than the largest. So they knew that eventually the regulation would catch up, that eventually you'd have a lifeboats for all provision in the law. But until it did, meh. Literally, to save money. That was their reason. To save money, they left empty berths on the Titanic where the lifeboats will go when the law catches up, but until then, we'll just put nothing. So they only had 25% of the required lifeboats for the number of passengers that were on board the Titanic. We all know what happened in 1912. It hit an iceberg. Do you want to guess how many people died? You're right, 75%. They broke no laws. Think about the number of CEOs that get dragged out in front of the court of public opinion after they've done something disgustingly unethical, and what do they all say? We were within bounds of the law. We broke no law. This is the standard for business? And so people who are anti-capitalist now, what they've completely failed to understand is that the capitalism we have is not actually capitalism as Adam Smith envisioned it. We have a bastardized capitalism. Capitalism for bastards, if you like. And the capitalism we practice today is not actually the purest form of capitalism. It actually undermines capitalism, where we have increasing levels of stress, we have declining levels of technology, declining levels of trust, declining levels of cooperation. We have unstable economies. Is because of this false view of capitalism that we have. As Adam Smith envisioned it, it was about trust, it was about cooperation, it was about human beings. He believed that you prioritize people over profit. He actually wrote in The Wealth of Nations that I don't need to speak any further about it, it's obvious. And then didn't write anything else about it. That's why we have to challenge the system. That's why we need an infinite mindset. That's why we have to have the courage to stand up to Milton Friedman and say, you're wrong, I don't care about your prize. Well, he must be right. It's to stand up to bastards like Jack Welch and people who've immortalized him. And to say, no, our form of capitalism prioritizes people, trust, cooperation, empathy, maternal instinct, longevity. Not the same as long-term or sustainable. I don't use the word long-term. 20 years is long-term. 30 years is long-term. Infinite.